Excellent. Hello, everybody. We'll just wait for a few more people to turn up. I can see everyone rolling in. So get comfortable, get your drinks, your lunch, and we'll start in about 60 seconds. Excellent. Still see plenty of people turning up. Okay, so I think we'll kick off. So welcome to the latest QCS webinar, Prepare to Pass. This webinar will be looking sort of deeper into the CQC inspections, showcasing our new product QCS Quality Centre and showing you how QCS Quality Centre can help you better prepare for your next inspection and help you to continually evidence that quality care digitally. So feel free to leave any questions or comments you have in the chat. We've got a lot to get through, so we might not have time to answer them on this webinar, but we will definitely respond afterwards. So today we have some great speakers. Well, if I'm honest, we've got two great speakers and myself. My name is Stephen, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager at QCS. I'm also joined by someone you may all recognise, Lindsay, who heads up our product content. And finally, we have Alana, who is our product manager, and she heads up the team who designed and built QCS Quality Centre. So hopefully we're going to get lots of great insight around that. So before I hand over to Lindsay, I just want to give a brief intro into QCS. I know a number of you are on the webinar are customers, but for those who are not familiar with the QCS, we're the leading digital provider of compliance management policies and procedures that are all tailored to your business and always up to date. So enabling over 7,000 care locations to deliver and evidence the highest quality care. So at its core, QCS Compliance Centre is your digital hub for quality compliance and knowledge, with other products focused around continued assessment, that's the quality centre we're looking at today, and then dedicated dementia care with our dementia centre product. So we make compliance management easy so you can focus on what matters most, and that's delivering quality care. So to kick us off, we're just going to have a quick poll, and then I will hand the reins over to Lindsay. But I just want to sort of get, a temperature check of the room. So currently, how prepared do you feel for an inspection by the CQC? And while you all sort of answer that, I'll hand over to Lindsay.
Hello, everyone, and lovely to see so many of you joining us today. So let's have a look and see what the results are of that poll. So somewhat prepared, 73% of you, 17 not so, and 9% of you are very prepared. So for all of you, I am sure you will get something out of this webinar. And for those of you that aren't feeling at all prepared, you will definitely get some reassurance from the next 45 minutes or so of your time. So let's get started. So the purpose of this webinar is to help you prepare for your next CQC inspection. In order to do this, firstly, we need to take a few moments to explore the fundamental elements of the new CQC single assessment framework. After that, we will then explore how audit and mock inspection are important for you in preparation for a successful CQC inspection. So let's start with what has stayed the same. So that's the easy part, and it's actually one of the biggest parts of the framework. So the 5 key questions, safe, effective, caring, responsive, and well-led, all stayed the same. The ratings, inadequate, requires improvement, good, and outstanding, all staying the same. And actually, the fundamentals that underpin these ratings and these key questions have also stayed the same. It's how the evidence is collected and the standards at which you are assessed is where the changes have occurred. Next slide, please. So the big change is moving to a single assessment framework, and it's as the title suggests. So historically, adult social care, GPs and dentists and NHS trusts all had different frameworks to work from. Under the single assessment framework, it's the same. For all social care providers, local authorities and integrated care systems, we are now working under the same framework. So it should be simpler and easier for everybody to understand. Next slide, please. So what else has changed? So we are in an always-on framework, which is flexible and risk-based. One of the big changes is that dates of inspections are no longer linked to ratings. So your rating can be changed without a site visit and without looking at all of the quality statements. And I'll talk about the quality statements in a little bit more detail in a moment. So we're moving into a desktop assessment-based approach. Doesn't mean that people aren't going to come and visit you on site. There will still be an element of site inspection, but it's not the thing that leads the framework. The framework is now led by an evidence collection system, which is essentially remote. So if you look at the cycle on screen, CQC will have a relationship management call or an evidence collection call with the provider. As a result of that, there will be an assessment and a publication of the report will be produced, and that's the state of play. So you might be sat at a good. Then, over time, based on risk, you might have a concern raised, which happens. We know it happens, a safeguarding concern. CQC will then be in touch. They will then ask for evidence under the particular key questions and quality statements that relate to whatever the concern is. There will then be an interview online. You will share evidence, and based on that evidence, hopefully there is no change in your rating, but there may be a change in your rating, or there might be further evidence needed, and they might then progress to a site visit. So this is a cycle that will then close, and then you come back to a status of ongoing and continuous improvement and reporting. Next slide, please. So all the key lines of inquiry have gone. There were 335 of them. You probably remember S 1.2, etc. They've all gone. And all of the information from within them hasn't gone anywhere. It's just being presented in a different way. So next slide, please. That different way are the 34, note the number is significantly less, 34 quality statements, and these are known as the WE statements, and these are the standards which you are assessed against. And as I mentioned, it's not new. So if you look here, the 6 quality statements for effective and the 8 quality statements for well-led, these are old friends that we know well. Shared direction and culture, freedom to speak up, assessing needs, supporting people to live healthier lives. These are all things that you're already doing. It's just the evidence is being collected and assessed in a slightly different way. I've highlighted here as an example environmental sustainability. We understand any negative impact of our activities on the environment, and we strive to make a positive contribution in reducing it and support people to do the same. So that's an example of a we statement. So underneath each of these titles, there is a similar statement. Environmental sustainability is interesting because it's one of the new ones. It's also one of the ones that you need to worry about the least, because it's not something that they're going to be assessing in detail in the first year. But I put it there as to highlight that it is a new concept that you need to consider. Next slide, please. So under the other key questions, caring, there are 8 quality statements. Responsive, there are 7 quality statements. And safe, there are 8 quality statements. Safe is probably the biggest one to focus on. This is where we start. We need to make sure we're safe. And you'll see again, there are the old firm favorite friends in there: learning culture, safeguarding, safe environments, medicines optimization. These aren't new things. Exactly the same as they were previously. It's just they are badged in a different way. The one I've highlighted to make note of is workforce wellbeing and enablement. And that's because it's a relatively new statement for us. So we care about and promote the wellbeing of our staff and support and enable them to always deliver person-centered care. We've always cared about our staff. The interesting nuance from a CQC perspective is that they are now asking you for evidence about that in order to show how you make sure that you have happy staff, happy service users. And so that's something to consider, how you're collecting evidence in that realm, because it's a relatively new one for us. All the others, very much old firm friends. Next statement, please. So in order to help you with this, if you're a QCS customer, if you look in your system, you will see there are some posters which detail all of the quality statements under each of the key questions. Another new concept, next slide please, you will have heard of the I statements. So these are similar to the we statements, only they are from a different point of view. So the I statements are from the point of view of the service user. So you need to be able to provide evidence to demonstrate from the point of view of the people that you support that if you were to ask them, they would say, I am treated with respect and dignity. I am empowered to get the support and treatment that I need when I want it. I am in control of my planning for my care and support. And if I need help with this, I know how people will help me. So you have to demonstrate from the first person sense how your service users experience care. And again, within the QCS system, if you're customers of ours, you can see examples of these for each of the key questions. So you can start thinking about what this means for you in your service. Next slide, please. So another new thing, lots of new things, 6 new evidence categories. So these are people's experience of health and care services, feedback from staff and leaders, feedback from partners, observation of care, processes and outcomes. Now, processes is where we are going to be looking and spending the time for the rest of this webinar. And this is around completed action plans and mock inspections and how these processes, if you are doing them well every day of the week, every day of the year, that's how you will be able to prepare to do well in your CQC inspection. Next slide, please. Another new element that is worth considering very much, but it's not something to get overly concerned about because it's kind of out of your control. So you need to be aware of it to understand it, but don't worry too much about the detail. Those of you who want more detail, you can look on the CQC website and I'll put a link to that on the slide shortly, and you can explore more detail. I will try and take you through in a summary a little bit about the scoring because it is an area that people are worried about. So we are moving away from assessing at a single point in time. So the different areas of the framework are assessed on an ongoing basis. So this means that the different quality statements can be assessed at different times and updated at different times on a continuum. Those scores from those quality statements from the evidence categories are translated at key question level into a percentage, and that percentage is what determines the ratings. The best way to sort of show you this is to show you this. So if I go to the next slide, I will take you through an example as best I can. So this is from the CQC website. It's the example that they provide, and I will talk you through it now. So the CQC in this example have come to look at infection and prevention control. So this is one of the quality statements under the key question SAFE, just one of the quality statements. So we assess and manage the risk of infection. We detect and control risk of it spreading and share any concerns with appropriate agencies promptly. That's the standard at which you are being assessed. So the way that they have done this in this example is by looking at the evidence, 4 evidence categories, not all of them, just 4 evidence categories. So people's experiences of care, feedback from staff and leaders, observation and processes. So for people's experience, they're going to look at patient surveys or resident surveys. They're going to look at complaints and compliments records. For feedback from staff and leaders, they're going to call the staff and speak to the staff at the service. For observation, they are going to visit the environment and see what it looks like for themselves. And for processes, this is an interesting part and possibly the most controversial part, they are going to look at existing evidence. Now, what they mean by existing evidence is that for the quality statements not assessed during the inspection, scores are based on previous findings and published ratings for the relevant key question. So for processes, they will be looking at existing evidence, and that will be from previous inspections. So where the key question that relates to that process was rated as outstanding, they would get a score of 4. Where it was rated as good, they would get a score of 3. Requires improvement, a score of 2, and inadequate, a score of 1. So that's based on historical evidence. So moving on, this process has occurred. The score for people's experience is 3, and that's an updated score, and 3 means evidence showed a good standard. The score for feedback from staff and leaders was 2, which means that evidence showed some shortfalls. The score for observation was 3, good standard, and the score for processes was a 3, and that was based on evidence from previous inspections that says that the previous inspection said that the evidence was of a good standard. So that score is then totaled against the maximum score possible, which in this case is 16, and that gives you a percentage of 68%, 69 if you round it up. So let's move on to the next slide to see what happens next. So under the key question of safe, you can see the other key question, the other quality statements are there. They haven't been explored, so existing scores are placed there based on previous ratings. Then you've got the new evidence for infection and prevention control, which comes in at a 3. So that total is then added up in conjunction with the existing scores to give a score of 21. That's then compared to the total possible and converted into an overall percentage for the key question. That comes out at good. Now, for all of you who I've lost, myself included, in the details of those scores and percentages, don't worry too much about the detail. The key here is that there is a scale and there is a really transparent score system. So the thresholds are really important. So in this example, this is a low good for the key question of safe. So 3% lower overall would have been a requires improvement overall for this key question. So it might well have been the case in this example that this key question was sat on requires improvement, but the improvements that have been made have resulted in a 3% increase, which has tipped them into good overall for that key question. And so that's the important thing to grasp about scoring. Don't worry too much about all the other detail. And as I mentioned, there's a link here on this slide. Go to the CQC website. There's quite a lot of pages on this and this example with a lot of more detail associated with it. So do dive in if you're interested and have a look. And I hope that's a little bit helpful explaining it in an overall kind of way. Next slide, please. So in summary, there is a spotlight on capturing ongoing continuous improvement and the lived experience of people. So with the power of the QCS Quality Centre, you can use digital audits and digital mock inspections and action plans to demonstrate the good and outstanding care that you're providing. And what's really important is that where you identify the need to improve, you can capture this well. So let's now take a look at auditing and why it's important. Next slide, please. So a poll. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you. Yes, just going to run another quick poll before we get into sort of looking at the QCS products. So just interested to see how many people online still run paper-based audits and paper-based mock inspections. Just let you answer that.
And let's have a little look and see what people think. And of course, paper-based can be all sorts of different ways of doing things. So very, very mixed there. So and people have got a mixture as well. Thank you very much for letting us know. So next slide, please. And again, let's look at auditing and why it's important. Next slide. So there are two, I call it sort of two pillars when it comes to auditing. There is responding to concerns and there is continuous quality improvement. And four key things to remember about this. Auditing shouldn't be a tick box exercise. It should have meaning and purpose. Less is sometimes more. So rather than doing as many audits as you possibly can, as many times as you can, no, you should be doing focused audits for reasons that you understand. And you have to be dynamic and flexible in that. So if you have an increase in medicines errors or an increase in falls, or you're concerned about the environment not having enough dignity, then you will be doing more auditing, increased auditing or increased frequency of auditing, or you will be reviewing the audits you've got in place because it might be that they're not quite got the content that you need them to have. So you need to be dynamic, and less is sometimes more. Actions are so important. It is worse to do an audit and not do the actions than it is to not do the audit at all. I'm sure many of you have been in that space. I certainly have myself as an experienced professional in the industry, in that place where an audit has happened and the action hasn't been completed. And it's awful because you know that there was a problem and it appears that you've done nothing about it. So actions are key. And then sharing those findings. So you don't want to be working in a box, working in a silo. If you've found something and you've improved it, make sure everybody knows about it so that the risk of negative outcomes is reduced because everybody knows how they can improve and how things can get better. Next slide, please. So which audits should you do? I mentioned that you don't want to be doing too many. There's quite a lot on here. So I would consider these as the kind of fundamentals. So you should consider some sort of audit in each of these spaces. And you wouldn't be surprised to see medicines management, safeguarding, accidents and incidents being up there as important. And anywhere where you're not doing all of these audits, I would ask you to ask the question why, and then put in place some rationale. So if, for example, pressure area prevention, all of your service users are independently mobile and you're not concerned at all about pressure ulcers, that's fine, but you need to document that risk. There is a risk assessment somewhere in the organization that explains why you aren't doing an audit to look at pressure prevention. Whereas obviously in a nursing home where there are a lot of people who are potentially nursed for significant periods of in bed or on a chair-based kind of bed-to-chair scenario, then you would be doing that a lot more and that audit would be more prominent in your service. There will also be audits that aren't on this page that are very bespoke and specific to your service. So what the message is here is that you need to make your audits fit your service so that you know that you've got a good governance process in place. And there is a checklist within the QCS system if you'd like to look at that, which kind of gives you a bit of a start to do that assessment and make sure that you've done your gap analysis on your actual audit processes. Are you doing the right audits for your service? And I've mentioned the word dynamic and responsive before. This will change with time. So if within your service you've got nobody living with diabetes, and then you have someone who joins your service who is an insulin-dependent diabetic, you're going to be doing some auditing on diabetes, which you may not have been doing before. So you switch things on and you switch things off based on responsive need. Next slide, please. So to help you understand this a little bit more, I will take you back to the concept of responding to concerns and continuous quality improvement and the difference between those two things in auditing. So responding to concerns. So an anonymous complaint has come in to CQC about your service, and they've said people fall all the time and are left alone for long periods. Now, that's obviously upsetting to hear and frustrating to hear, and it may or may not be the case. It may not be true. That doesn't matter. What you need to do is respond to that concern. Now, if you have got a suite of audits in place, you are much better placed to respond to that concern. So you share your evidence. You share your monthly accident and incident audit, which will talk about how often people fall and when they fall, and potentially you've explored why they're falling. You will look at your workforce planning audit, which will demonstrate how you show how many people should be on duty or how many people are allocated to service users at any time based on their needs. Your staff rotas and your time and attendance records to confirm that your planned care matches the care that is actually being delivered from a time perspective. Staff surveys, how do your staff feel about how the care for your service users is managed, particularly in relation to falls? Relatives and residents surveys, care observations audits about whether people are left or alone at all for long periods. What does it say in those observations audits when you've walked around your service or you've talked to your service users? Your complaints audit, your safeguarding audit, and if you're residential, your call bell audit, and if you're domiciliary, your visit logs, your time and attendance logs. So you share all of that evidence, and hopefully that evidence will show that if there was a problem in this area and this concern was something that is valid to your service, then you've investigated it. You knew about it already. So all you're doing to the Care Quality Commission is saying, yep, I knew about that. And because I have a great auditing system and good governance at my service, this is what I've done about it. And if I've not completely sorted it out yet, this is what I'm planning to do. So they then go away reassured and the case is closed. That's responding to concerns. Now, the other side is continuous quality improvement. So this is about making processes more effective. So you've done a medication audit, and this highlights poor record keeping, low stock issues, and indicates possible medication errors or risks of medication errors occurring. So you need to take some action. You're going to investigate the gaps, you're going to report any errors, and you're going to take further action as needed in response to any errors that you discover, which might involve notifying safeguarding and CQC. You are going to look at staff training, staff supervision, you're going to do spot checks, observations of practice, you're potentially going to do more competency assessments, and you're going to come back and you're going to re-audit once you've done all of those things. So the outcome is that you have reduced the risk of harm, you have reduced the risk of problems, you're going to have a more effective process, better record keeping, and reduced risk of medicine errors. That's good governance and audits helping you demonstrate continuous quality improvement. Next slide, please. So, now I'm going to move on to digital mock inspections and what that means for you as a service. Next slide, please. So why would we do a mock inspection? What is a mock inspection? And so you might have experience of mock inspections where these have been done by an external provider or somebody outside of your organization. You might have a quality assurance team within your organization that do mock inspections, or you might be a standalone provider and you're thinking, how on earth am I going to do a mock inspection? So what we're going to take you through now is some practical solutions for how this will be meaningful and helpful to you. So the CQC Single Assessment Framework is live now. So everything that I've told you is live now. So if you're inspected today or tomorrow, it will be under the new framework. So you need to be ready and you need to get prepared. Next slide, please. So digital mock inspections are an opportunity for you to assess your service against the new Single Assessment Framework, gather evidence for compliance with each quality statement, and under the new evidence categories, demonstrate this really, really clearly. So you can map and signpost this evidence visually in the digital dashboard for each key question and each quality statement. You can clearly identify compliance and put in place a plan of action to fill any gaps around where evidence is needed to demonstrate compliance. So the best way to see how we can help you is to show you. So I am going to hand you over now to Alana, who is going to show us a little bit about the QCS mock inspection system.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hi all, I'm Alana, Product Manager for Quality Centre. Before we start, our Quality Centre product is service type and region specific, and for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to show you an England care home account. And as Lindsay mentioned, the best way to talk you through our features is to show you. So without further ado, let's have a look. Welcome to our Quality Centre. As you can see here, this is the main dashboard and there's some menu options on the left, which we'll explore in more detail a little bit further down this demo. We'll start in the Quality Centre settings. So here we're able to actually customize compliance levels. So you can set what you deem as compliant, partially compliant and not compliant within your service. You also have the option to add in a partially met option or just have met and not met if you'd like to when conducting those audits as well. You can then turn on or off our QCS framework audits, and these are templates that you can use and customize or just create your own. Here we've got the frequencies. Again, for some flexibility in the system, you can customize your days early and grace days allowed. So how early you can begin and how late you can conduct them if they've got a set scheduled date. So having that flexibility is really important for different service levels as well. We then have our mock inspection settings, which allows you to set a guided start date for that schedule and a recommended frequency on how often you'd like to conduct. Here, in this case, it's against the key questions, and you can set those frequencies individually. Now, if we have a look back at the dashboard now, you can see you've got a timeline view at the top, and you can see any upcoming audit activities that are scheduled to happen. You can drill into those as well to see what they are. Helps you to plan ahead for what's in the coming months, which is really helpful for resource planning. You then have this tabbed view, which allows a manager to see everything that's going on in their service, who it's assigned to, and the areas. And those areas are customizable as well, so you can create your own that match your service needs. You then have a set of widgets down the bottom, which allow you to just keep track of kind of any overall things that are going on, overall compliance levels split by area, and any standard overviews that you have. If we go into conduct now, this is the full list of all of the audits that we have available on the system. The QCS marked ones are our QCS framework audits. And for the purpose of this demonstration, let's go into mealtime and schedule that to happen from a team member. So if we go and click schedule audit, you can select an accountable person and a scheduled date for that to start. it will then continue to repeat for you on that frequency until you close that schedule. So you don't have to keep doing that each time. Now, for a standard user, they will be able to go into their My Audits on the side menu and actually see a refined view of anything that's assigned to them, and they'll be notified about it too. So if we select that audit we just assigned, we can go in and start to conduct it. Here you'll see some intro text, again, customizable. You can edit that to be whatever you'd like it to be. Here you can then go through the standard checks. So we've got 3 options in this account. If you're selecting a partially met or not met, it's mandatory that you add in comments as to why. It's also mandatory if you celebrate a standard to say why you think that something's been done really well. The guidance text is all customizable as well, so you can really tailor that to your needs. We just add in a few examples here. You can also add extra standards if you'd like to, if you notice something whilst you're conducting, and save it as a draft and come back to it as you need. If we go to the action plan now, you'll see that you can add actions against all the standards, even if they're met, but it is mandatory that you add actions on anything that you've marked as partially met or not met, on how you're going to rectify that. Add in a title and a description, assign that to an accountable staff member, and also select a due date for that to be done. You also have the option to mark it as urgent if you feel that's required too. The next stage, you can see here the overall compliance for the audit you've conducted. You can see an action plan, and this is a working document, so it will always show the most up-to-date status of that action, and you can also export those, and then a full summary of everything that you've added as evidence throughout your conducting process. You can add in any final comments and upload any final evidence. Now we've looked at a really drilled down view. If we go into reports now, you can see you can split the different audits by compliance. You can also drill down into a sequence. So if we go into the sequence we just conducted here, you can see the instance we just did, and there'll be a nice graph view, which as you can see on this one, there's just the one occurrence. So for the purpose of this demonstration, if I pop into one that has a little bit more data, just so you can get a bit of a visual of how that progresses over time. Here you can see there's a couple missed on there. So you can actually see that that's a great form of evidence. You can share that with the CQC and export these as you wish as well. Now, if we look at mock inspections, this is going to show you a dashboard of all of the key questions available and a red, amber, green color coding of how you're doing on collecting evidence against each quality statement and evidence category. The amber is going to show you something that's being conducted against, but you've got outstanding actions, which you can click into and either choose to see the actions or the summary page. You can also then export those actions if you'd like to. Really helpful visual there of anything that's outstanding that needs your attention. Now, if we go in to actually conduct a mock inspection, you're provided with the key questions first. You'll then select a quality statement, and then against each of those, an evidence category for you to collect your evidence against. It will then walk you very similar to audit through standards, where you will select an answer and then input your evidence or comments. It is mandatory always, regardless of the answer, that you are adding in a comment for these mock inspections. And if you want to keep something as amber, even if you're marking it as yes, you can say more evidence is required. If you're marking something as not met or you're adding more evidence is required, you have to add an action to do that. So that you're able to track and actually follow up on those. Again, very similar action pop-up. You are assigning an accountable staff member and you are setting a due date. Now, if we scroll to the next page, very similar again, you've got an action plan, so you're able to track and export any of the actions. It will update as people update their actions as well. And a full summary at the bottom. You can then again add summary comments. So I bet you're wondering what's happening to all these actions that we're creating. So at the top here, you can see the Manage Actions page. Now this is for a manager to be able to come in and see all of the actions that are due, assigned, and completed within their service, and who is accountable for them. You can also then see an individual view as well from the My Actions page, very similar to the My Audits. They're filterable by categories, by staff member, and by time period. to really refine that view down for you. And that is a very quick whistle-stop tour for you on our quality centre. There's lots of really in-depth flows and things to explore, but that's kind of the key ones for you to look at. And I'm sure the sales team or the free trial would be a great way for you to explore further. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you, Alana. Well, thank you both for that incredible deep dive into the kind of the CQC inspections, and then a closer look at our new product quality QCS Quality Centre. We've actually got one final poll to see if your feelings towards sort of the inspections have changed over the course of this webinar. So do you think you would feel better prepared for your next CQC inspection with QCS Quality Centre? So yeah, wait for that, and then wrap up. I might throw a little bit of a white light at the beginning. Like I said, we won't have time for questions, but I think we will have a little bit of time at the end. So we'll get to some of your questions as well. There we go.
Oh, that's great to see.
Perfect. That's really interesting. So lastly, as a sort of Alana sort of alluded to, if you kind of like what you've seen, I think the best thing to do is sign up for a free trial of QCS Quality Centre. You get to have a play around in the system, then you can get to speak to one of our team to learn more. To top it off, for this month only, we're offering up to £450 off our top bundle with our June offer. So it's certainly worth scanning that code and then discussing the best option for you and your business with our team. Okay, so thanks for everyone for submitting questions. I'm not sure, Lindsay, shall I pick some questions out and
yeah, so I had a look at the questions, and there's a few in there. I've answered a few individually. Lots of people have asked about whether we will have if there is a recording and whether the slides will be shared. Absolutely, yes. So anyone that's joined the webinar, you will receive the slides and a recording of this webinar. One of the questions that has come in is if a home hasn't been scored before, as it is a new home, how will they be scored when the existing scores are normally used? So CQC have said in that instance, if the service has previously not been inspected and there are no previous findings available, then the evidence for the quality statements, each new quality statement will be collected in the first year. So they will build up a picture over time, looking at every single quality statement for that service, and they won't obviously be able to use existing ratings because there aren't any. Another question, are the items on the audits customizable? Alana, I don't know if you want to answer that one. I know they are, but you will answer it better than me.
Just answer for us.
We offer full customization of our audit system. It's designed to give you a framework to base off so that it doesn't take huge amounts of setup. But yes, you can customize all of the items, all of the standards, and completely create your own if you'd like to.
Okay. Someone has said here, just come in, what if we've improved on a previous piece of evidence? How will that affect us if they take a previous lower score? So that's a really interesting one, and it is one of the most controversial elements about the new single assessment framework, and it's a really hard one to answer. And what I would say is that you need to have a really good rapport and conversation with the people that are inspecting you, with the CQC inspectors that are inspecting you, and you have that opportunity when the scores come in. You still have the opportunity to do your factual accuracy assessment and to challenge. So if you feel that there is evidence, then speak up. It's an opportunity to do so. And this is a new framework. The CQC are also finding their way. So you really, it's why it's so important to know the framework, know where all the quality statements, quality standards sit, so that you can challenge when needed. Because if you think you've got evidence and that's new that you want to bring in, you need to raise it with them. I can't guarantee what will happen, but you definitely need to be vocal about it. There are some questions here coming in around sort of pricing and around the product, and I would say get your free trial. The best way to answer those questions is to sign up for a free trial, and then you'll be able to speak to one of our compliance advisors, and they'll be able to ask you to talk to you specifically about your requirements from a product perspective. Will the
there's
new
a few
CQC method?
around. Oh, go on. So I was just going to say there's a few around sort of existing customers understanding how they subscribe. So maybe Alana, worth saying around if you're an audit customer or if not an audit customer.
Yeah, I mean, if you are an audit customer already, it's really worthwhile just checking out your permissions, because that's what will enable the mock inspections piece. We try to keep things quite granular so you can really control who has the visibility of these things. So you probably do already have it, you just need to enable it. And if you're not an audit customer, contact your account manager and they'll be able to help you get set up and add that onto your package.
Cool.
Absolutely. Will the CQC method allow for quicker re-inspection? We've been waiting for almost 18 months and currently stuck in a requires improvement rating. So absolutely, in theory, that's one of the most positive things about the new signal assessment framework, is that because it's ongoing and because it's continuous and because you don't have to necessarily have a site inspection, yes, they should be able to assess you. However, it's risk-based. So one of the downsides is that if you have made improvements, you are doing well, and you're not getting that kind of negative heat from safeguarding in other places, and people generally feel that your service has improved, you're not considered as high risk, so they're less likely to contact you. That doesn't mean you can't contact them. So it's a brave thing to do, but it's a good thing to do. Get in touch with them and say you are ready, and harass them, basically. Ask them to come and see you. If you're confident that you're ready and you're ready to present that evidence digitally, then contact them and see if you can persuade them to come sooner. But unfortunately, we are hearing that people are waiting, unfortunately, for long periods of time still, even under the new assessment framework. So really, use your voice and see what you can achieve by contacting them yourselves to get them to come.
Great. I think that's pretty much all of them answered. So I'd say thank you for everyone submitting your questions. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to us speak. I'd also say thank you to Lindsay and Alana. I've had a really good time. I hope everyone has too. And yeah, hope everyone has a really good afternoon, and take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you and good luck, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.